everybody to Dharma from Seattle. Today we're going to be exploring the topic of, I'm going to lump two of the Eightfold Path together, wise action and wise livelihood. And similarly to wise speech, these ones fall under the ethics category, the karmic creating category, that wise understanding and wise view can help us have the understanding on what causes harm, but ultimately wise action, wise speech, wise livelihood, that's where all the karma is created. That is where cause and effect takes place, and where cause and effect essentially gets to dictate what's going to happen in our lives in the future. And so one of the fundamental pieces of wise action and wise livelihood, the core and the crux, is to not cause harm. In that harm can be, so it's a very broad topic. Buddhism does generate lists in which that you can check to see if you're good, because sometimes we can think like, oh, am I causing harm? Because I think especially in corporate America, capitalist hellscape, we can look at a lot of the harm that's being caused, and also forget that this is action and livelihood is also about our personal survival and balancing those two. And so when we're talking about what are the karmic creating, suffering creating, because that's what we're looking at, like, is it going to create suffering? Is it going to generate suffering? We're looking at the precepts, the 5 precepts. So do my actions, does my livelihood cause me to steal? Or does it cause me to kill? Or does it cause me to create sexual misconduct? And all of those are important when we're looking at creating suffering. I think that those are the very direct ways. And I feel like this is one where a lot of people can get like really heady and be like, well, in the long line in the stream of things, like, and it's just like, are you specifically lying? Are you specifically stealing? Are you specifically killing? And, this isn't to like allow people to let themselves off the hook, but also to give some space and some air around how do we survive in a time in a place like this. And the Buddha also gave very specific instructions around what work would be considered, what types of livelihood would be considered to cause suffering. And so that's dealing in weapons and killing and poisons. So it's a lot of direct killing. Human trafficking. So that, good. I feel like these are all pretty agreeable. And meat, oddly. Maybe not so oddly, because it also deals with killing. So these are, I like to give these very specific ways, because so often when it comes to livelihood and we're approaching a spiritual path, people want to ask themselves, is my livelihood spiritual enough? Is it doing enough good in the world? And what this is pointing to is that this is not necessarily saying what you have to do. This is saying what you ought not do if you don't want to create suffering, which is different. Because one of the things that I'll get into more during this talk is in no way Buddhism is trying to come at it from this capitalistic standpoint and be like, you need to have a good job. That's not what Buddhism is about. Buddhism is not about the external and the external refuge. What they're saying is this is a path to freedom from suffering. And so it would be like if you're trying to bake something and you leave out the baking soda and the baking powder, you're gonna have a shit fucking cookie if you leave out wise action and wise livelihood, right? And so it's and that's what it's about. It's not trying to tell you to have a very spiritual job, because ultimately our jobs are impermanent. Don't create harm, but they're impermanent. We're gonna retire someday. We might die before we retire. So just don't cause harm in the meantime. It's bringing it back to integrity as well. I think an understated quality amongst the world that we live in today is integrity, doing the right thing when nobody is looking, because with our actions we also have to consider the way we don't want to harm other people with with the precepts or things like that, but we are people as well. We are people that we can harm, and we can harm ourselves with our actions. And so being able to recognize that when we practice a spiritual path that includes integrity, that brings it into one of the most important things about this practice, which is us, our freedom. I think that we all understand that it's not about, we're not on the path to free others from suffering. Maybe on some level that can be a part of it, but we're trying to do this for us. So the more that we can pay attention to our actions when nobody is looking, not trying to, and when we do fuck up, and I think that's the other aspect of wise action and wise livelihood, that unlike Christianity, where you break a fucking golden rule, you are damned to hell, or else you do the fucking 20 Hail Marys. It's just about noticing when we're out of alignment in our integrity, and being able to be honest with ourselves instead of blame or justify it, blame other people for it, or justify it because I'm tired, or I'm too this, I'm to that. Just being honest. And being honest to ourselves and hopefully to another person, I think helps really take the weight and the power out of those actions. Because when it hides in the dark, it creates shame. Shame. We don't like that. So, that's the introduction. Question for discussion today. Where is integrity? Where is there an integrity leak occurring? So if you are on the live stream, go ahead and journal or meditate on the topic. Let's do some meditation. Finding a comfortable way to sit that is upright. Drawing the lumbar in. Allowing the stomach to relax. Allowing the shoulders to fall away from the head. The jaw to relax. Muscles around the eyes. Coming to the breath. And with it, bringing your intention for practice. Maybe recollecting the first time you heard a piece of Dharma that just resonated with you, that landed, and you knew in that moment. Maybe there was another way. Holding this recollection as you steadily keep track of the breath. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. remembering that the breath is the anchor to the present moment. And you can weave together your intentions, your inspirations with the breath. If the breath was the home, the refuge, what might you hang up in the house to make it feel more like home? And of course, the mind will wander. This is natural. What can you do to make the breath more appealing than spending time in the future and spending time in the past? Become curious. Let it be playful. Keeping the breath in the background. And like dropping through a dropper into a pool of water, the word forgiveness. Into the mind and into the heart. And what kind of ripples? Don't follow them. Just acknowledge what ripples the word forgiveness sends through the heart and mind. Noticing any craving and aversion. Notice who comes to mind. And begin approaching forgiveness like you would maybe a small animal in the wild, carefully trying not to scare it. And one of the ways we do this is by not bringing to mind the most brutal resentment or that we have on our heart. But bringing to mind something small. An annoying person at work. Something you saw out in the world that you had a judgment about. Somebody said something silly on the internet that you didn't like. Something small. And begin offering that person the phrases. I forgive you as much as I can in this moment. I understand that the harm you caused through your actions, thoughts, or words, intentional or not, comes from suffering. And I forgive you. temptation to run to the biggest hurt. Directly comes from our aversion to pain. We want to get rid of it. Avoid the temptation. And allow yourself to practice with these smaller things. Seeing the beginning, middle, and end of forgiveness, the resentment, the intention, and the relief. Is not a lesser practice. Now turning the forgiveness practice toward ourselves. Recollecting some of the ways that we have caused harm to others. The ways we have harmed ourselves. Through our own confusion, our inability to see cause and effect in that moment, our actions, words. Sometimes inaction. The lack of wise understanding, the lack of wise view. Saying to ourselves, I forgive you as much as I can in this moment. sometimes the words can feel hollow. And recognizing that that's okay. Developing the practice of saying the words. And that it might take some time of different applied action to be able to mean those words, to trust ourselves again. So I forgive you as much as I can in this moment. And I'll aim to develop trust. I'll take the actions necessary. I forgive you as much as I can in this moment. And I will take the actions necessary to build trust. As you exhale, letting go of that foreground, of forgiveness, letting it fade, settling back into the background of the breath. The home of the breath, decorated with our intentions. And as the bell rings, holding to this intention, letting the bell be a bridge from eyes open or from eyes closed to open. Last time with wise speech, one of the connections that I made was towards self-abandonment. And when talking about cause and effect, when talking about karma, when talking about actions and livelihood, there's the big obvious ones that, the Buddha talks about, stealing, fucking to harm, killing. And, there's also so many of those subtle actions that cause harm to ourselves, to the people in our lives. And I think that maybe through the meditation, looking at the forgiveness and the things that caused us harm and that we caused harm, that we're forgiving ourselves for, they don't always fall very neatly in those categories, do they? Self-abandonment can look a lot like avoidance. It can look a lot like saying yes when we mean no. And I draw that connection of self-abandonment and these ethics and these because as I've talked about a lot, sometimes it feels like with these ethical things, it can come across as like these are the rules and this is how you be good. And bringing it closer to what it means by the triple gem, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So often when we hear these things, like it just sounds like, I don't know, Buddhist lingo, mumbo jumbo. What the fuck are we talking about? Taking refuge. And it's something that I've been personally reflecting on quite a bit is this self-abandonment aspect that comes from speech, actions, livelihood. Those don't happen in other places. Every time that I have to go back and forgive myself for the things that I've done, it's from those places of self-abandonment and trying to learn how to not do that anymore. To stand in my values. And so when it comes to the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, the triple gem, and taking refuge, I think so often we feel like if we do good, if we do the right work, like work as in occupation, not like the work, that will bring us the refuge and the fulfillment, even subtly, even subconsciously. I see it in my own practice so often that, it's so easy for me to get lost in the becoming of something else, that I can, just get lost in as the meaning of it all. Like being a counselor, going to grad school is the meaning of it all. Building a business for myself is the meaning of it all. And it's good to be inspired, and it's good to have goals that make us feel good. And those are still all external refuges. And, so again, when we're talking about self-abandonment, it's not in just the ways that we don't stick up for ourselves. It's also in the ways that we put ourself in the external. And looking at how fragile that is, because it's impermanent. That's such a huge aspect of this practice, is being able to cultivate something strong enough that no matter what in the world is happening, that we have that strong mast within ourselves that does not waver, that it can take any force of wind, that our meaning isn't dependent on our success in the external. I think so often in our lives we've said that, once I get this, then I'll be happy. And sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. Like, once I get this little part of my life figured out, I'll be happy. And before you know it, you've already thrown the dart even further. It's never enough. And so allowing it to be something within ourselves, something that isn't going to be fluxed by impermanence, and something that is also not dependent on the externals of life. While you guys were discussing, I opened randomly to this little page, and I thought I would just read it because I thought it was pertinent and relevant. It says, this is from like the Dhammapada Reflections, which is some of the really good hits in Buddhism. So this is one of the verses. It says, "It's not easy to be born as a human being." Thank you for acknowledging that, Buddha. "And to live this mortal life. It is not easy to have the opportunity to hear Dharma, and rare for a Buddha to arise." And so this other side is a reflection that someone else gave. "In terms of here and now, we are born as human beings whenever we have mindfulness and integrity. Because of our tendency to compromise Dharma principles, this task becomes difficult. Following preferences is much easier. However, merely to follow liking and disliking is not living as we could be living. Instead, we could reflect on cause and effect, on what happened last time we allowed ourselves to become lost in experience. We are fortunate these days to have ready access to Dharma, but the Dharma is hard to hear because we have created obstructions by having followed our preferences for so long. When the Buddha was alive, some of his disciples became enlightened at once by simply listening as he taught the Dharma. Why can't we listen in the same way? Get the message and drop the burden. If we did that, the Buddha would appear here and now." I love that little frame of, because that was something that is like so common, and it's so annoying when you read the suttas in Buddhism. It's always like, and the Buddha gave this talk, and then the whole fucking crew got enlightened, and you're just like, I've listened to lots of talks. Hey. And it's so right. That what was that sentence? But the Dharma is hard to hear because we have created obstructions by having followed our preferences for so long. And how often are we listening to talks and then we're just like, meh, yeah, just like judging each thing, which things apply, which things don't. And that is the beautiful part of this practice, right? Is that it is a see for yourself model. There's no hell to pay if you don't listen to the Dharma. It's simply, as I said, the cause and effect. See for yourself. And again and again in my own relationship to practice, when it comes to my actions in my livelihood, I consistently fuck around and find out, to be honest. There are so many times that I've thought that certain aspects weren't for me. And that is one of the points of the meditation practice, is so that way, whether you decide something is for you or not, hopefully eventually you can see the suffering in it. I think as a counselor, that's one of the first goals before I can tell, before I can help anybody move through their work, is for them to recognize their suffering. I can see it, and I can give them I can tell them and I can give them the tools, but unless they see the suffering themselves, it doesn't fucking matter. And so, and we see this in our friends, we see this in the people, in the world, and how often do we think about it in terms of ourselves? Like, we are always in the position of like, no, I currently know everything. not really recognizing the ways that we are still maybe unaware of the suffering in our lives. And, I think that's one of the most frustrating things that, I wish that I could in my practice with other people, is to be able to impart, some of this awareness. All I can do is help them develop the awareness themselves. And it takes so long because, as said in this, we've been led around, our preferences are so long, for so long, we still believe our meaning is external. And, and the people that I work with, that is still the thing we bump up against all of the time is, once I get this part figured out, this aspect of my relationship, once I figure out the job situation, once I do this and that, then all the anxiety will be gone. And I think one of the things that it really points to is meaning. We're so conditioned to have our actions and our livelihood be the meaning itself. The things that are external, that is the meaning of life. The stuff that we inhabit and create, that's the meaning. And Buddhism says no, it's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The internal refuge, the thing that is unmovable within us. That aspect of not self-abandonment, not placing our happiness, our ability to have contentment no matter what. No matter whether we're working our favorite job or our least favorite job. Whether our actions that day were kind of a mess or, 10 out of 10. That we can still have that internal refuge. And I feel like that's one of the things that Buddhism doesn't really articulate the greatest is like, what is the meaning of all this? It doesn't give you that. It says, here's a way to end suffering. It's up to us to figure out what the meaning is. I'll end with this conversation I had recently. I asked somebody to read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and they came back the following week very upset. And there's this crux in the book, where let me give you a little bit of background on the book, in case you've never heard of this book. It's written by a man who survived World War II in the Holocaust. He was in concentration camps, fucking brutal. The first half of this book is his recounting his experience. The second half of the book is a therapeutic method he developed based off of his experience living some of the most horrific moments of human history. And essentially what he discovered through, attempting to have some sort of intention of not losing himself to the awful conditions trying to maintain some sense of integrity, was loving kindness. And so what what the person that I was talking to was very upset about was it kind of goes from just kind of telling the story to where he's going to start telling how he developed the theory itself. And so he says, something about, how I got through so much of the horror of this was I would remember my wife. And it doesn't matter whether she was alive or dead. I would remember that love. And this person was very upset with me. It was like, why would you not care if she's dead? Like, you should be wanting to know and to go find her and to fucking, very upset about this. And I'm like, it's not about, obviously he doesn't wish his wife was dead. It's about recollecting the love, that remembering what it felt like to feel love was an internal refuge, generating loving kindness, essentially. It actually had very little to do with her. It was remembering the feeling of love, and that was just a vessel to create loving kindness. And so that being another element and huge aspect when thinking about our wise actions and our wise livelihood and trying not to create harm, even in conditions that are very fucking difficult, is being able to recognize again and again that there is this place that we can cultivate that is just for us. And we can have our goals, we can have our desires to improve the world and do good in other people's lives, but ultimately we don't have to lay our happiness and goodness in things that are just going to be impermanent in the end anyway. So that's bleak. But hopeful, hopefully. Any questions or thoughts?
So I hear as if I listen to the right podcast, I can get enlightened.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. That's what I'm walking away from here.
That is canonical.
Yes. Yes. If you can hear correctly, if you can tune in with the right frequency, the tuning aspect, then exactly. I would be so alarmed, as a person who gives Dharma talks, if people in the room were just that's what you imagine, right? Just it's just
someone literally starts glowing, hovering on the chair.
Like the last airbender kind of.
Yeah. Floating around them. Yeah.
Okay.
I had kind of a dark thought when you were describing the wrinkle book. I wonder what great works are going to come out of concentration camps here.
Yeah.
Because we're in the suffering pressure cooker right now.
We are in the suffering pressure cooker.
And that's where so much of the good shit of the last 100 years came from. But here we are again because we didn't fucking learn.
That seems consistent throughout time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just thinking about in the meditation all those sirens that were going around. It's man, there's a lot of suffering going on out there. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and end it there. If you would like to donate, you can donate via cash into the bold. If you would like to pay via Cash App, or Venmo, you can do that as well. Maybe John would be so kind to even drop it in the group chat, if possible. Maybe I'll start remembering.
I could be motivated.
Okay.
And, I'll shout out my boy Phoenix. Phoenix! Who might be in the chat tonight. It was a bit of right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and dedicate some merit. May any goodness that was cultivated here today be spread above and below, to the seen and the unseen, to those being born and to those who are dying.